I haven't seen Ryan in a while.
Hey, he's probably off dealing with one of the boss's shenanigans.
Yeah, the boss is gonna walk in here and tell us something super ridiculous.
Hello, boys. You'll never guess who I just trapped inside of this cursed Game Boy that I bought from a shifty stranger in an alleyway.
And then Ryan will be like, guys, I'm in a bit of a pickle.
Hello, boys! You'll never guess who I just trapped inside of this cursed Game Boy that I bought from a shifty stranger in an alleyway.
Nuh-uh. Nuh-uh.
Boys, I'm in a bit of a pickle.
You're a mad lad.
Is it true? Did you just trap the boss inside this cursed Game Boy that you bought from a shifty stranger in an alleyway?
Hello? Yes? Yes? Okay, that was the mayor. He says you're a hero. He wants to throw you a parade.
And I'm going to give you $1 million bonus.
Ryan. Ryan, wake up. We're way behind on getting the episode recorded.
Oh, what? Damn. It was a dream. And how can we be late? The boss hasn't busted in here to say anything stupid yet.
Oh, that's because I locked the door. He's been out there for like a week.
Hey guys, come on guys. I just wanted to show you this cursed Game Boy I bought off a shady stranger in an alleyway. Guys, it's really cool.
What are you doing here? What the hell?
What?
Hello and welcome to the Retro Odyssey. I'm your host, Ryan, joined by my co-hosts, Steven and Matt.
Hello.
Hello.
How are we all doing this week?
I'm good. Just retail. It's as horrible as ever, but paying the bills.
Yeah, I feel that as your fellow retailman. It's not great.
Yeah, and I mean, I do, grocery delivery right now, so it's, it's a whole lot of the same.
Right. Just a lot of not great.
Yeah.
But hey, we're not working all the time. What you been doing in your spare time? What games you been playing?
Well, after just about a year of, every month on here saying, oh, I need to get back to Final Fantasy XIV, I finally got back to Final Fantasy XIV.
See, I believed in you the whole time.
So I went back to that. I've gotten up to level 28.
Cool.
So I'm almost out of what would be the free trial period. If I hadn't already paid for it several times already.
So what class are you going with?
Gladiator currently. The intent is to work this character into a gunbreaker when I get there.
Ah, cool. I think you need to be 70 to unlock it, or is it 60? I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, like I can't even touch it until I get to that high level and I'm in the Shadowbringers content. But yeah, so I've got that. I've got my Chocobo, which makes me happy. So yeah, I've been doing that. Also been playing just a ton of 2D Metroid, like a lot of it.
Like all of it.
Yeah, like all of it.
Well, I was gonna play a handful of different games this month, but then I had got really heavy at work, and then Saints Row 3 Remastered came out. And I'm not gonna turn it on and look at my log time, but I have probably sunk 50, 60 hours in that game, and it just came out like a week and a half ago.
Damn.
Yeah. It was Like, I loved Saints Row 3 back in the day on the 360, and when this just dropped, it's so pretty. And it's just as glitchy as the original. I'm gonna put together like a little compilation of just bullshit that happens at random, because it's really funny. It's like nothing has happened in the game that has just like broken the game for me and ruined a mission. Unlike the original Saints Row 3, where I actually have a save file on there that is soft locked.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's really fun. But just the glitches abound. And that's a lot of fun. And yeah, that occupied all my game time this month, or most of it. So that'll show me to play games. Teach me to make plans.
Well, since we last recorded, I mean, it seems so long ago now because it's been like 6 weeks since we last recorded. But
Yeah.
I finished Final Fantasy 13.
Yay!
Oh yeah, you were getting into all those.
Yeah, and I ended up my final playtime ended up being 56 hours. That's with none of the post game stuff.
Right.
It is really, really, really enjoyable experience. The second version of Bartandalus, the boss, almost broke me. But I did eventually get over that hurdle, and yeah, played it all the way to the end. I've got a save game in a good position with everyone upgraded, everyone with really decent weapons and stuff. So when I do decide to go into the post game, I can just jump straight in.
Nice.
But it's not something that I have time for at the minute.
Right.
But I've gone from that into Final Fantasy 1 on PlayStation 1. I'm not that far in yet. I'm only 2 hours in. I've just got to the Marsh Cave. I've not got in yet, but I'm at that point, which is like the first major dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And yeah, that's good so far. There are definitely improvements over the NES version. The main ones being if you attack an enemy and the enemy dies, your attack will go on to kind of like one of the other enemies rather than just slashing into empty space.
Right.
Which is really frustrating when that happened on the NES.
It's also, not held together with, twigs and glue.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's mainly what I've been doing. Like Steven, I've been on Final Fantasy 14 a lot as well.
Yeah, but you're always on Final Fantasy 14 a lot.
I am indeed.
That is your territory, and I will not invade it.
Oh, by all means, come along, join the club.
I swear, as soon as they open up data center crossing, we're getting together at some point.
Yeah, I think it's got to be by region at the minute.
Yeah.
You can't do it internationally, unfortunately.
That's
weak. But they have made it so you can move between servers within the same data center. So, and I think there is a way to set up to play on a different data center, but you would have to set up your whole account on that region.
I was about to say you'd have to set up an account on a VPN.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean you can play from people on your own data center. I mean, whenever you sign up for a dungeon or anything like that, it'll just pull people from all over your data center, but just not international.
Yeah, maybe one day.
Seems discriminatory, just a little bit. Anyway, we've all been busy with games. Let's get busy with the news.
Well, the first news, I think we have to say congratulations to Tetsuya Nomura for winning the competition to name Elon Musk's new baby. Now he did end up having to change it a little bit because California wouldn't let him put numbers in the name, but he's just changed that to Roman numerals, so that ended up being fine. But it does sound like a Kingdom Hearts subtitle.
It really, really, really does. And I can't remember how it's pronounced either.
I don't know if it can be pronounced. It's kind of like Prince's symbol.
No, I read a thing. I'm looking it up right now. It is pronounced a specific way, like a normal name, which is really dumb. But Well, now I can't find it. Anyway. It has a proper pronunciation. When you pronounce it, it's a normal name, but now this is a classic Ladasha, the dash don't be silent. Which Steven might get. I don't know if you would get that joke, Matt.
I do not.
Oh.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, I was going to say Steven probably gets it. Basically, it's someone's name in school is Ellie-A, and it's like trying to figure out how to pronounce the name, and she's all, it's Ladasha, the dash don't be silent, which is just like, okay. Weird names, weirdly spelled names.
It's like the twins Orangelo and Lamangelo.
Yeah. Speaking of Roman numerals, 13 is getting remade.
Whoa.
Yes, it is. I've never actually played it, but
Yeah,
I have
I've
heard of it.
I have no experience with it at all.
Back when Ubisoft was good, is I guess all that really needs to be said. Seems like an odd choice, but you know what? I'm not going to complain.
The gameplay trailer is meant to drop on the 7th, I believe, which is tomorrow at the time of recording. It does say gameplay trailer. Now, the last gameplay trailer that Ubisoft put out didn't have any gameplay. Because Ubisoft have redefined the word gameplay to mean not gameplay.
God,
Apparently.
fucking hacks.
So we will see tomorrow if it actually has gameplay in it.
Right. Ridiculous.
Jesus.
But does that have a release date?
I don't think it has one yet. They'll probably give a release date, the quote-unquote gameplay trailer.
Oh, yeah, they probably will.
It would be really nice if this was a joke and it was actually Nintendo was going to do some release gameplay and release date for Metroid Prime 4. But, that'll never happen.
Or Prime Trilogy on Switch.
Something, Metroid, Jesus.
Adam was saying there's a rumor about a game being worked on that's tied to Metroid Fusion, either a sequel or a remake.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that a while back.
I mean, I would love to see a Metroid 5. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I would love to see it.
Well, the theme of, you've played Fusion. We all played Fusion, so you kind of know at this point that there's no way Samus is in the good graces of the Federation at this point. Absolutely cannot be. She has gone and toasted multiple space stations, defied multiple orders. She is she's not friends with them anymore, so the whole theme of that game would be quite different. I would look forward to it, but yeah, it wouldn't be just well, you've destroyed infinite money and research, but you know what? There's still some space pirates. Go get them.
Well, and the thing is, she doesn't have to be sent by the Federation.
No, she absolutely doesn't. It'd just be a very different game, and I would like to see that actually happen.
Yeah, I would just like more 2D Metroid.
Yes. Because as much as I love the 3D Metroid, I even like most of the gameplay in Other M. I think it fits best in a 2D platform. Yeah,
and there's, stuff we'll talk about later, but I like the 2D Metroids a lot. And I also I would rather see more actual 2D sprite based stuff than the 2.5D kind of thing.
Yeah. So, what else is new?
Well, speaking of Nintendo, it's a good job that Mario is a plumber because Nintendo seems to have sprung a leak.
Ah!
I wrote that joke a month ago. And it's been sitting in a text file on my desktop for a month. I've been sitting on that.
Well done.
Worth it.
But yeah, anyway, Nintendo leak. Quite a lot of documents and pictures ended up on some somewhat dodgy sites, which showed kind of hardware specs, operating system code for a lot of Nintendo consoles and devices and stuff like that, and a lot of kind of memos and internal documentation. And yeah, it is. It was quite a big leak. I mean, there's nothing really. A lot of it is kind of like confirming stuff that people already knew. But a lot of people were saying, "Oh, this is going to help emulators get more accurate and stuff like that." But the thing is, like the creator of the Dolphin emulator has said, if they even look at that code, then Nintendo can file a cease and desist against the emulator.
Yeah, that's the thing.
If they use anything from that code, Nintendo can file cease and desist, because at the minute it's kind of like a legal gray area with them, with Dolphin being kind of like an emulator of the GameCube. But if they use stolen code, then it becomes something that Nintendo can go after.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they absolutely cannot touch it.
Yeah, the creator of the emulator said he cannot even look at it in case it influences any kind of like decision that they make on the emulator.
Right.
But yeah, so all of that came out, including like internal documentation about why they use the friend code rather than like an actual
Proper. Well, and I mean, and what always pissed me off about the friend code system was they got so close with the Miiverse.
Mm.
They got so close to a proper gaming social network to allow for friending and following and stuff like that, and they only half did it. And then they still had friend codes. Like, if I have a friend code, it's called my unique Nintendo ID name.
Yeah.
This isn't like Discord where we could all have the same username and Discord differentiates by slapping on a few numbers at the end that you don't normally see. It's like Nintendo, Club Nintendo has its own unique names. You get a name, it's either taken or you get it. I don't understand why they always go halfway on this stuff, other than having complete control.
Well, the reason that they kind of did the friend code thing is because having people choose kind of like regular screen names and stuff, they said it's going to result in a high probability of duplicates, which I guess they didn't want. I mean, there are kind of like ways to get around that. I mean, I'm sure I've got the same PS4 username as dozens of people, but they wanted to kind of like get rid of that possibility completely, so they decided on this 12-digit friend code, which it's a pain in the ass, but 15 years on, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, I wish it would, but you know, whatever.
But Nintendo haven't been the only ones in the news, because Sega have made two earth-shattering, game-changing announcements, or at least that is how it was billed. Famitsu magazine in Japan said Sega are going to announce something that is going to shake up gaming like as a whole. And it was kind of funny because Sega made two announcements, and the first one was just absolutely ridiculous, and people thought that was a big thing, and it wasn't.
Yeah, there was no way it could be the big announcement. Absolutely could not be.
I mean, we'll go on to that in a second, but the actual announcement, the actual big announcement, was this fog gaming, they're calling it. Basically, people within a certain distance of an arcade in Japan can now access the arcade machines, play them remotely, and apparently it's like really, really low latency. Apparently that's what the fog thing means. It's to do with kind of like the distance between you and the actual arcade machine. So it's going to be good for kind of like quick reflex titles like fighting games and stuff like that. So it will allow people, basically when the arcades are shut, to people to basically still use the arcades, and arcade owners can get that revenue that way even when they're closed, which great idea for Japan, I'm sure. because there are
I
a
was
lot
say
of
this-
arcades in Japan, but
I
it
was gonna say
wouldn't
this
work
means that-
elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. does not have many arcades anymore. It's been
Yeah.
dying for a long time. Dying or changing. I'd say a 50-50 split of both, because like the classic arcade that you think of when you think arcade, that is mostly dead. There is one here in the Oklahoma City area that's pretty great. It has a lot of old classic machines. It has a ton of pinball machines in it. Great place. But then it also has a lot of the newer arcade machines with the weird games that remind you of like Chuck E. Cheese.
So we don't have, I don't think we have a proper arcade, like traditional arcade in Charlotte. We do have a place called Abari, which is it's a barcade. So like they have some of the old arcade machines. They've got a lot of pinball. They've actually got an indie arcade machine called Killer Queen, which just got a Switch release a couple of months ago. But that's the only thing I can think of that would fit that arcade setup, and it's a bar.
Yeah, I was about to say Tulsa has a place called The Max, and it's a retro pub, and it has a ton of arcade, like classic arcade machines that have been restored.
Yeah.
And it's cool because you go in and you buy a drink, and they give you the drink, and they give you a couple tokens, and you take your drink, and you go and play a game.
Yeah.
And it's super, super cool. Or you can
Yeah.
just buy tokens and go play games. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's the closest actual, like, almost purely an arcade that I can think of.
Yeah. I mean, Abari is close. It's just like, it's basically an arcade with a bar in it, but there is a bar in it. So, you have to be,
21,
18, 18 or 21 to even get in.
Yeah, so you've got like one or two like specific arcades kind of like dotted around, but like in Japan, Sega alone owns 200 arcades.
Yeah. Because
Just in Japan.
Japan.
So they're all over the place. And Sega have also got machines in a lot of third-party arcades as well. So it is something that will work in Japan. I'm assuming it will stay in Japan.
Yeah.
Because it is a good idea.
I like the arcade experience. I genuinely enjoy the arcade experience.
Yeah.
It's just, it's dying so quickly.
I mean, I love me some pinball.
Yeah. Oh, man, you'd love Cactus Jack's then. It's like literally like 40% pinball machines.
They have some good ones.
Yeah, they have some fucking great ones, like super classic ones as well.
Because Abari has the Twilight Zone pinball machine, the Addams Family, Lord of the Rings. There's a couple other really good ones.
I've been thinking about planning a trip over to Cactus Jack's at some time in the near future. When I go, I'll go and take a bunch of pictures of all their arcade machines and all of their pinball for you.
All right, cool.
Because it's a super dope place. Anyway,
yeah, the other Sega announcement, which I'm hoping stays in Japan, because
God, I hope so.
Because it's I mean, like, what the fuck, Sega? It is mini Game Gears, like mini Game Gears.
like
that they're
smaller,
reproducing.
like I think maybe smaller than the Game Boy Micro.
Yeah,
Mini.
I mean, like way smaller. They fit in the palm of your hand, and there are 4 games on it for, I believe, $50. So if you've kind of like got large hands, you're not going to be able to do it. If you buy all 4 that they're putting out, that's $200, and they will give you a magnifying glass to help you see the screen. So if you fancy paying $200 for 16 games that you can barely see and play, then go for it. Otherwise, like, what the fuck? Seriously, if you saw a picture of these, you would be so surprised by how tiny these things are.
Well, and here's what is fucking ridiculous. I would just like to say. Okay, so they just released the highly successful and high quality Genesis Classic or Genesis Mini. Mega Drive Mini, depends on where you're from, doesn't matter. It's a solid piece of hardware, and it has, 40 games on it?
Something like that.
It has a lot of games on it, a lot of classic games, a lot of fondly remembered games. They did a better job with their game selection than Nintendo did. Definitely, as far as pinning down what people wanted. And they had the opportunity to do a Game Gear classic. And I was talking to my brother about this. All they really had to do was take a Game Gear, like an actual Game Gear, and the hardware, and start recreating the hardware inside the Game Gear.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need the crazy fluorescent bulb that's in there that sucks the batteries dry. They could have highly efficient LEDs.
Yep.
A cleaner screen for brighter, more vibrant colors. It would have worked just fine. And all that extra space for all those batteries, they could replace with a small battery pack that would have given it adequate playtime, because the fluorescent bulb was what really killed the Game Gear.
Yeah.
I mean, it gave it a magnificently backlit screen, but also it just murdered the batteries. That when you do LED swap outs, it like triples the battery life.
Yeah.
Or better. It goes to up to, it gets like 13, 14 hours of battery life versus like 2.5. It's insane. And then in that extra space that they saved with not having to have a ton of AAA batteries in there, they could have put a small flash storage and a little bit more computer in there to have to basically auto load up a launch page when you start up your Game Gear. Mm-hmm. This would allow for two things. One, it would allow them to, because building these Game Gears would be cheap, because it's not expensive technology anymore. Yeah. It would give you original hardware, which means it's not emulating.
Oh, that's true.
It would not be emulating. It would just be playing on original hardware, which means the games would run exactly as they are supposed to. And if they went the whole distance here and they just kept the game slot on there, it also would have meant you could play your old Game Gear games. It would come loaded with 20, 25 Game Gear games or whatever they would want to put on there. But then if you had a Game Gear collection, you could just play it on a modern Game Gear.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would shell out $100 for that. I would do it.
Yeah, and I would. I mean, I've got 2 Game Gears that don't work. And fixing them would cost like 100 quid or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind if it was like a little bit smaller, because the Game Gear is like very bulky. But I would definitely go for that. I mean, even if it was emulation, if the emulation is done in the same way that M2 did the Mega Drive Genesis one, then it's a solid emulation.
Yeah, they wouldn't even have to make it smaller as much as they could just make it thinner.
Yeah.
But yeah, instead we get these tiny little pocket-sized Game Gear Micro bullshit.
Mm.
Or like, and how many pixels are on that screen? Like 6?
Not a lot, in 1.15 inches.
Just ridiculous.
Like, what the and that's the other thing. These are like novelty items at this point.
Yeah.
$50.
And you've got to spend 200 to get the magnifying glass.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming the magnifying glass you can buy separately as well. But yeah, if you wanna get one free, then you've got to buy all 4, and they've only got 4 games on it.
So yeah, God
why?
Damn.
Absolutely absurd.
But it is funny that everyone thought that was going to be the big Sega announcement that was going to shake up the game industry, though.
Tell you what, like, Nintendo can get away with this sort of stuff.
Sega cannot.
Yeah, if Nintendo had taken and made 8 Game Boy Minis, and they all had various games on them, like if they did like a Game Boy Pocket Mini and they had one for every color of the Game Boy Pocket, and each one came with 2 games on it, 2 unique games, Nintendo could easily sell those for $50 and people would buy them up, and that is just a fact.
Yeah.
But Sega does not have the, I don't even know what to call it, the capacity to get away with bullshittery like that. Like, Sega can't do what Nintendo can.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just what it be. When it comes to this, Sega does not have the nostalgia power.
They don't have the
Nintendo
customer
does.
goodwill.
Yeah. Which, they can't damage, apparently. No matter how hard Nintendo fucks up, people still go back to them, and I am a living example of that.
Yep.
Well, I mean, maybe this is like a cultural thing. Maybe Japan are screaming out for mini Game Gear things.
Well, and I would go with that because Sega did better in Japan than it did in the U.S. Way better.
Yeah. I mean, it was an actual fight in Japan.
Yeah, over here it wasn't really a fight. Like they tried and it wasn't.
Yeah, here Nintendo dominated. In Europe, Sega dominated. In Japan, there was an actual fight.
Yeah. Maybe Japan is crying out for that. I don't think people would buy that in the West.
Nah, I doubt it.
But that remains to be seen. Maybe it is getting a worldwide release. They've only said Japan so far.
Well, we'll find out soon enough, I suppose.
Yeah.
But anyway, that is all the news that I've got this month. We can move on to the game releases for June, which there's not a hell of a lot. Well, I mean, there's a lot of games, but not so much retro stuff. But we have Command & Conquer Remastered Collection, which has just come out a couple days ago.
Yeah, but it wasn't Command & Conquer Red Alert 2, so I don't really care.
Well, wouldn't that be in the box?
Oh wait, is this? Well, no, because I think this is Command & Conquer. Like it's like 3 games. This isn't the Command & Conquer 10th anniversary, 15th anniversary collection, where it had every Command & Conquer up to date. And I have that box somewhere, but it doesn't like to work anymore. It doesn't like Windows 10 at all.
Yeah, I had that as well. Actually, I got it for like £25.
Yeah, excellent collection if you can play it.
But yeah, this one has Command & Conquer and Red Alert. Includes 3 expansion packs. So yeah, it's not the full collection.
It's not.
Other games that we've got are Burnout Paradise Remastered, coming on June the 19th for the Switch.
For the Switch. Great game.
Which I'm assuming it's kind of going to be the same as the Burnout Paradises that we've already got on the other consoles.
I would assume.
Also on June 19th, we've got Ys Memories of Celceta, I believe that is pronounced. That's a remaster that's coming out for PS4. The big one is coming out a week after that, though. SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, which is coming out on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch.
I'll probably have to pick that up for Switch.
I've never played it, but I have been told that Battle for Bikini Bottom is a solid game.
It's a very solid game.
Yeah, I've never played it either.
It was one of the honestly kind of a is the term I'm looking for, a sleeper hit.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Where it was just people who played it were like, "Oh my god!" but it never really it never exploded in the way that you think like major games do.
Right.
Because people go, "Oh, it's a SpongeBob game," burp burp burp, but really it's a good game.
Yeah, so I might have to take a look at that myself. The only other one I've got is the Wonderful 101 remaster. I've never heard of that game, but that is coming out on PC, PS4, and Switch on June 30th.
I actually kickstart backed the remaster. It's I got a physical copy for Nintendo Switch, and the physical releases have been delayed just due to production slowdowns, but that's kind of been normal for any game that's been in production right now. Apparently a lot of smaller, like Streets of Rage 4, my physical copy for Switch has been delayed a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because just production issues. Wonderful 101 got delayed, so they're like redoing the while they're waiting for the games to be reproduced, they're redoing like all the physical edition box art and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For like that holographic cover where it's all animated. It's like, it looks really, really slick.
Cool.
Not really a huge deal, but right now, if I know we have mixed opinions on limited run games, but Master Blaster Zero and Master Blaster Zero 2 are getting physical releases with limited run, as well as their soundtracks are getting vinyl releases. And I can definitely attest that the first remake, is excellent.
I don't know. I've never played any of them, so I have no idea.
And I just realized it's not Master Blaster, it's Blaster Master. Master Blaster, I believe, is a...
It's a Stevie Wonder song.
Oh, yeah, wrong one, so it's Blaster Master Zero.
I've never played it either. I know that the main conceit of it is that you can get out of your vehicle and go and explore and...
Yeah, it's kind of like a two-tier, it's like a two-leveled Metroidvania, where you have your Metroidvania sections where you're rolling around in the tank, and then you find little sub-areas that you jump out of your tank, and you go about it on foot. And it's kind of a top-down Explorium type thing. Shoot aliens, shoot a boss, get an upgrade, run away, get back in your tank, and start blowing shit up and go to the new zone. It's really, really good. Intercreates did it. They did the Zero remake and the second one as well. Intercreates did the Mega Man ZX. They did Mega Man Zero. They also did Azure Striker Gunvolt series, which those games are great as well. Absolutely fantastic. Their style is very unique. And the Blaster Master games are like a frame-by-frame remake, except arted up nicely.
Well, I'll have to give it a look. I mean, I'm not giving Limited Run any money, but
right. But I mean, they're on all digital fronts too. So
yeah, there is one other retro release, but it's not a game. The PC Engine / TurboGrafx Mini is finally out.
Finally, Jesus!
Yay.
I know because I got mine today. Well, it's currently sitting in an Amazon locker, which I'll pick up tomorrow. But reviews have gone out. People have said, it's really decent. As with a lot of these systems, the emulation isn't perfect across the board, but neither was the Nintendo and Sega ones that came out in the past few years. But reviews have been overall very positive for it. So I'm looking forward to getting my teeth into that tomorrow.
Nice.
It's been delayed from... I think it was originally going to be coming out in April, and it's just been delayed and delayed and delayed. And Amazon finally shipped it out yesterday.
Fantastic.
So yeah, and that is all of the retro releases for June.
You'll have to give us a update next time on how it actually is.
Oh, I'll do an unboxing video. I'll pop it up on the Retro Odyssey Facebook page as well.
Hell yeah.
And I believe you have some anniversaries for us.
We do. We actually going to cover 2 months because we're late. Starting in May. First anniversary was Pokemon Emerald turned 15. The Sega Saturn, as far as its US release, has turned 25 as of May. Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, turned 15.
That was a very good game.
Adam would approve of this. Perfect Dark turned 20. Bomberman 64, The Second Attack, turned 20. And kind of a sad anniversary, because it's been more or less canceled this year, but the very first E3 happened 25 years ago, May 1st.
I mean, is it really sad?
Not really. I mean, it's kind of a bittersweet sad, because E3 has been bullshit for the past quite a while.
Yeah.
But it used to be a legit big thing. So it'd be kind of like if we had the anniversary of the very first GameStop that opened, which would have been Babbage's, technically.
Yeah. We used to have Babbage's.
Because, I guess they bought out that and EB Games and then made GameStop, and, weird times. Weird times. But that's May. Oh, and not quite retro. Not yet. We're almost there. Super Mario Galaxy 2 turned 10. So, we're getting there. But in June, which we are now in as of recording, Space Channel 5 turned 20. And Earthbound / Mother 2 turned 25. So, holy cow.
Yeah.
Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, this one makes me feel old. That turned 15. I didn't realize. Jet Set Radio for the Dreamcast turned 20. And Diablo 2 turned 20.
Hell yeah.
So, like, holy cow. Oh, Advanced Wars Dual Strike for the DS also turned 15. Wow, that's weird to think of a DS game that's turned 15. Like, it totally, like, now that I'm dating it in my head, it makes sense, but, like, it doesn't seem like the DS is that old.
Nah. I mean, we're getting up there. Like,
Oh, Kirby Canvas Curse also turned 15. Another DS game. Oh, you know what? And again, not quite retro. We're almost there. We are almost there as far as qualifying as retro, but the 360S turned 10. Which actually makes a lot of sense now that I think about it, because I remember when it came out.
Yep.
Because I have a Gears of War 3 360S. And that was dropped at the end of 2011, so... Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, I got one when it came out. Originally I got like just the 4 gig one, and then that one crapped out, so I had to buy another one. But yeah, I bought one back in 2010.
And I think that about wraps up all of these, whatchamacallits, all these anniversaries. I'm trying to see if there's any other anniversaries here that are worth noting, and not really. Most of them are around 10 years old, which is nothing to sneeze at, but we're also kind of on the edge of retro at that point.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Good stuff. E3 is dead. Long live E3. Well, with that having been done, news, I think it's time to move into our main topic, which is pocket-sized, kind of. Alright, this month's topic is a console special for the Game Boy. It was not my pick, and it was not Matt's pick. So, without further ado, Steven, take it away.
It was me. It was all me. Yeah, so we're talking about the Game Boy, and by extension the Game Boy Pocket and Game Boy Color, because technically it all counts as the same thing. The Game Boy was released in April of 1989, in Japan at least, and then 3 months later in North America, and then a year later in Europe. Wow. Man, they did not like Europe.
No.
Primarily developed by Nintendo R&D 1, which is significant because those are that's the team that developed the first few Metroid games. And I mean, I'm sure most listeners are familiar, the green screen, the gray cartridges, it's, I would say it's one of, if not the most well-known name in handheld gaming. I mean, for, a long time, it was still, it's a Game Boy. Like, there's a reason they kept just adding on to the name instead of coming up with different names for them.
Dude, I'll tell you, I was sad when they changed over to the DS and they weren't calling it the Game Boy anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of a thing for me.
Yeah, and it was a good little system. I mean, they managed to get a lot to run on the Game Boy. Obviously probably the biggest title for it was Tetris. I mean, I think was it a pack-in here?
Yeah, it was packed in.
It definitely was in Europe. I mean, Nintendo kind of like really, really knocked it out of the park with having the killer app shipped with it. Tetris was a huge cultural phenomenon.
Yeah. And hell, even today, like, Tetris 99 is wildly popular. But
dude, like classic Tetris championships are still a regular thing that go on, and they play the NES version, and it is magical to watch these people play. Like, you would swear that a computer was doing it, but no, these are people that are playing Tetris at this level. And the classic one from 86. So, yeah.
84, I believe.
84.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're still going.
I mean, the Game Boy really made it made handheld gaming, number one, more accessible, and number two, just more popular. Because, I mean, we talked a little bit about the Game Gear earlier. You've got the Atari Lynx, and I've never even heard of this one, the Turbo Express.
Wasn't that a handheld TurboGrafx?
I think so. Yeah, portable TurboGrafx 16. Mm-hmm. So, you had those, and the Game Boy just spanked all of them.
Well, and it's funny too, because it's not like portable gaming was something Nintendo was brand new to.
Yeah,
because for years they ran the Game & Watch series, which I never realized was called the Game & Watch series, because when you weren't playing the game, it functioned as a digital pocket watch. Makes a lot of sense in the name now. I didn't know that because I'm super smart.
Yeah,
but yeah, they had plenty of experience with handheld gaming, and not just like the classic one-screen Game & Watch. They had invented the clamshell design with the Game & Watch. They had like these weird little multiplayer setups. So yeah, this was link cables and dual screens and all that jazz. Is like Nintendo piloted that way before the Game Boy. So
yeah,
this was just full realization of mobile gaming.
Yeah, and I mean I think it's also telling that they didn't stop production of the original Game Boy until 2003. So,
where were they selling these original bricks in 2003?
I have no idea. But production, I mean, even it says even after the Game Boy Advance released, they were still making them. They didn't cease production until 2003. I don't know where you could buy them, but.
Because, I mean, that was like in the middle of the PS2 era.
Yeah. Like, we were full into 3D gaming at this point, and the Game Boy, in all of its green screen glory, was still kicking out 8 bits.
Yeah. But yeah, and then there's, there was the Game Boy Pocket, which was just a smaller, thinner Game Boy. And it was a black and white screen instead of the green screen. And I mean, it's really not much else to say about the Game Boy Pocket. Like, it was just a smaller one. There was some of the other versions, the Game Boy Light that we never got here, which I think, did you talk about that on a previous episode?
I did. I brought it up as far as one of the slightly obscure consoles.
Yeah. Which I mean,
why the hell they were like, Game Boy Light, it has a back screen as a backlight, so you don't have to play by like street lamp or tiny flashlight or some bullshit. And then they're like, and now the Game Boy Color, which doesn't have a backlight. Like, they had to wait for an entire new generation of Game Boy and then a rendition of said new generation of Game Boy before they put backlighting in again.
Yeah.
But they had the technology. Like, come on. Well, I mean, Sega were using it in the Game Gear. I mean, not the exact same technology. The Game Gear was just like a lamp behind the screen. But it was there in the competitor, but it says a lot about the popularity of the Game Boy that it still outsold the Game Gear, even though it wasn't as technically proficient.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think part of that was you only had to put 2 batteries in it, and they lasted longer than the
instead of 6.
Than the 6 batteries of the Game Gear. Well, it's like, I sat down and I played my Game Boy Color a few weeks ago, and it's hard. It's hard to play.
Yeah.
Because of just the lack of lighting. But, like, I mean, we're going to get into this again a little later, but like on the Game Boy, I set and this is when I was 16. I wish the battery had lasted in the cartridge, but I had not a world record, but a top 10 contender for 100% speed runs in Metroid 2. And I played that on a Game Boy Color handheld, like the actual unit itself.
Right.
By lamplight. So...
See, what I've done is I've taken my Game Boy Color and got one of the kits that Pelican made that's got, like, you know, a battery pack you can attach to it and, you know, a magnifier with a light on it and, you know, that whole setup.
Wait, like Pelican for like phone cases?
I guess. I know them for their gaming accessories from the 90s and 2000s.
Well, probably not the same company then. It might be, though.
Speaking of accessories, you could absolutely properly Frankenstein up that Game Boy.
Oh, man, there is an entire episode of the AVGN about this.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely wonderful.
I think Ashens has done one as well.
Yeah, you can do all kind of wacky stuff with it.
Because we had a Game Boy growing up, and we had the light attachment and the magnifying glass and stuff like that. I think that's all we had, but there are a lot of things that you can add to it.
Yeah, when I first got the Game Boy Color, my parents, and I've told bits of this story where, you know, I got Pokemon and my parents got the other versions to play with me. They got this attachment for the Game Boy Color for all three of us that would open up and the magnifier would come out and the parts that opened up would be speakers. And then you had the magnifier and the light, and then it would cover the buttons to make the A and B bigger and turn the D-pad into a stick. And
yeah, I think that one was in the AVGN episode.
Yeah, like that was, you know, as a kid, I thought that was one of the coolest things ever.
And now as an adult, you're going, what the hell is this?
I mean, now as an adult, I've done the same thing, just as in multiple pieces. Right. Yeah, the Pelican Survival Kit is the thing that I currently have on my Game Boy Color. It is $20 on Amazon. Just be forewarned that the batteries in the battery pack may have corroded, like mine did. So the battery pack itself doesn't function. It has to stay plugged in with the AC adapter. Oh, here it is. Handy Pack Color for Game Boy Color. The exact thing I was just talking about. $60.
Oh, that is the same Pelican. That is the Pelican case that makes their super cases.
Nice.
Holy cow. I didn't know they got into that.
So yeah, I mean there's all kind of stuff you can do. Like, you know, people made all kinds of accessories for this. You know, there was the worm light, which I had one back in the day. You know, the blob light. Yeah, there were so many accessories made for all this. So actually selling an LCD screen replacement for the Game Boy Color, that's handy,
right?
It also says a lot about the build quality of the console that most Game Boys still work, whereas most Game Gears don't.
Yeah. My Game Gear has like 2 different blown capacitors in it.
I mean, one of my Game Gears doesn't turn on, the other one the screen doesn't work. But most Game Boys you find out in the wild, they're generally going to work or are going to be an easy fix.
Yeah.
Like, even if they're super fucked up and gross, they still work somehow.
I mean, hell, there's a Game Boy that survived re-entry.
Wait, what?
There's a Game Boy. Let me look this up. There's a Game Boy that survived atmospheric re-entry and still worked. You had to have it plugged in to power, but it worked.
Well, I know there's one that survived a bomb blast, and I think all they replaced was the screen. All the rest of the hardware was the same. But it's because the actual LCD itself melted under the heat, and then they replaced that. They replaced the screen and plugged it in, and it still works. It's on display in the Nintendo Museum.
Okay, so I think we're thinking of the same one. I was just misremembering what caused it to get all burned up. Yeah, Gulf War bombing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's the level we're talking about here.
Of durability.
Like this thing is melted and works.
It's impressive to say the least. Yep, still works. Nintendo is the king of the handheld market. No one has toppled them. They have stood victorious even in the rise of like mobile phone gaming, which obviously is certain limited, but it's still gaming on the go, and they still adapted and topped it. They have slain the PSP, the Game Gear, the Lynx,
The Vita,
the Nomad.
I mean technically
all these
Sony
different
killed the Vita.
handhelds. But every time something comes up to challenge them, they have beat it soundly.
And a lot of that is down to the games, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
There are just some fantastic games for the Game Boy.
And I think that's partly what made because like the Wii U was a dark time for Nintendo, and then the Switch happened, and I think that's the reason that they came back out from the red so easily.
Yeah,
was because they did portable gaming again, even if it is also a home console.
The stupid thing is, though, it's kind of like, why not open up that game, that eShop, and just put the Game Boy games on it? I can buy them on my 3DS. Why can't I buy them on my Switch?
Yeah, just put it on the Switch. U. Or bare minimum, at least just put a Game Boy Online.
Yeah.
Just put a Game Boy Online. Because no one wants to admit it, but the 3DS is approaching dead. Like, it's not going to be supported for a whole lot longer.
I mean, this is...
Well, by anybody.
Yeah, and, Nintendo gave us that crap, we're not abandoning the 3DS. They only said that until the Switch did gangbusters, and they're like, we don't need the 3DS anymore. Like, come on. It's the same crap they pulled with the Game Boy. They said, the DS is going to just be a third pillar, and, we're still going to support the Game Boy.
And as soon as the DS did well, they just threw it in the garbage.
Yeah.
And reasonably so. It's next-gen hardware. As soon as the Switch was revealed, the minute the Switch was revealed to be a portable, as well as a home console, I said the 3DS is dead.
Yeah.
And it was just a couple years later that they said, we're not going to really be supporting this anymore.
Because we're going to need to.
Like, we're still going to make them for a little while, and there's going to be a couple games that come out. But, like, once they release their big titles on it, like Metroid 2, once Metroid 2 was released, they were kind of done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no reason to.
Yeah, it'd be dumb to not drop old hardware.
See, what's really crazy is the Game Boy was $89.95 originally, and like that sounds like nowadays it sounds like nothing for a handheld, but I think back then that was a lot.
I mean, I just bought a 2DS like a month ago for about £60, which was an absolute steal.
Yeah,
absolutely wouldn't have paid $80-90 odd for a Game Boy.
I mean, I paid $50 for the one that I have, and I mean, 5 years ago it was working fine, but I think it's crapped out now. But one of the wackier things is, like, you could still call the support number for the original Game Boy like well into the 2000s. Like, a friend of mine still has the original Game Boy. It still works, and he still plays it from time to time. And something went out on it. I don't know if it was the screen or the batteries or what, but he actually called their support number, and they actually were like, okay, I don't remember exactly what they said, but basically he was able to send it in, and they fixed it and sent it back, just like back in the 90s. And I was like, really?
They've probably got like one person working on the whole department.
Right. That's really awesome, though. Oh, by the way, I crunched the numbers. A Game Boy in $2020 would be $178.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, no.
I mean, that is about what we pay for handhelds now.
Well, I mean, think about it. The game, or not the Game Boy Light, the Switch Lite is $199.
Yep.
And while that can't dock to your TV, it is an insanely more powerful, bigger screen, full light. The library is huge on it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it has all these different services, and we're okay with that. But but going back, and that's the weird thing, because you go like, oh, we wouldn't pay those prices now. It's like, well, I mean, the 3DS was $200 when it was released, I think, or was it 150?
Don't remember. I know they got in trouble when they did the price drop, and people were like, "What the fuck?" You know.
And then they did the BS ambassador program for the people who, yeah. But I mean, the whole thing is, back in '89, this was insane technology that they had pulled off.
Yeah, this was like next level shit.
This was next level shit. And then when we got like the Genesis, or the fucking, we just talked about it, Game Gear. Holy cow! I slept plenty last night. I don't know what's wrong with me. Game Gear came out and it was colored and backlit, and it ate batteries faster than anything else, and that's next level. Like, but the Game Gear was like a $300 piece of tech in today's dollars.
And at the time, it was the cutting edge.
And it was bleeding edge tech. So it's really important to put these things into perspective. Like, we go, man, we wouldn't pay that much for a handheld now. But at the time, it's like, this is the best thing out there.
Yeah.
It has games. It is relatively battery efficient. It's technically portable.
Mm.
You can link up, you can buy a cable, and you can play Tetris with your friends. And then when the Pokemon fad hit many years later, after it had established itself, the
Game Boy camera.
Yeah, the Game Boy camera, which is really dumb, but also really cool.
Yeah, like, it was great. Real quick, when in 2003, when they were discontinued, the Game Boy and Game Boy Color were the best-selling console of all time. Since then, the DS and the PS2 have passed them up. So Game Boy and Game Boy Color is now third best-selling console, second best-selling handheld.
Well, yeah, because I think at the time they were probably the best-selling console, period, at the time, but the PS2 still had several years of sales left in its life.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, because I know that the PS2, like, really sprang out there as best-selling, and then the DS series took up second place just because that was free money for Nintendo.
Yeah, and I mean the PS2, I mean, that was still, the PS2 was still going in like 2012, 2013. Like, it almost made it to the PS4 era.
No, seriously, almost. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they were still manufacturing them in, like, or for Brazil, because, like, they technically still manufacture Sega Master Systems.
Oh my god.
In Brazil. Or is it the Genesis? There might be Genesis 3s that they still manufacture.
The Master System, I believe, is bigger than the Genesis in Brazil.
Holy crap.
Which is ridiculous, but awesome. It's also super cool. Way to go, Brazil. Keeping retro gaming alive.
Bonkers. So let's see. The one thing the Game Boy Color had that the original didn't was the infrared communication. That was barely used.
I always feel like that was something that, like, Pokemon should have used.
They did.
I don't think it did it. Could you trade with the infrared?
You couldn't trade with the infrared. What you could do is you could do the it's like a mystery gift, as it was called, for gold and silver. You would do the infrared connection, and you would get like a little gift for your room in the game, and the mystery gift functionality was also in Pokemon Stadium 2, but obviously through the transfer pack instead of the infrared. But yeah, that did it, and then there were some other ones that did. I just don't know off the top of my head what they were. They got rid of it for the Game Boy Advance. I think it made a brief reappearance with the 3DS, I want to say. But yeah, the infrared was not well used. But yeah, I mean, you want to talk about, childhood nostalgia, like, I think even more than some of the consoles, the Game Boy tends to be what a lot of people think of.
Oh yeah, like I remember my friend had a Game Boy and he had Pokemon, and we would all kind of gather around as he played Pokemon
Mm-hmm.
and watch, and it was just kind of a thing. Like it's weird to think about it like that, or like passing the Game Boy around, trying to beat a level on whatever game. I remember doing that with the Ren and Stimpy game.
Yeah.
Passing the Game Boy back and forth. You die, you hand it over. It developed its own bizarre, like being a handheld and being mostly single player in most of your experiences. It developed this really interesting social experience with gaming because, well, it's like, oh, it's a one-player handheld. Also, a whole bunch of people can grab their console and go sit around outside or gather at someone's house and they can all bring their console with them versus, oh, well, you want to come over to my house and play the Genesis. It's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
It developed its own community.
Yeah, and that was I think that was a big part of why it was successful, because it was that thing of everyone could just get together and be playing the same game on their own system.
It also has a bit of a community with musicians as well. A lot of musicians do actually use Game Boys for composing.
They do.
Alec Empire, who is a German musician from Atari Teenage Riot, he did an entire album on a Game Boy under the name Nintendo Teenage Robots, and it is fascinating to listen to.
Crystal Castles also did several. I don't think they did a whole album, but they did on one of their older albums. Then they're just EDM, but they used an NES in a similar way, where they used it for like a lot of their MIDI draw and their sounds. They did a lot of composing with a NES, I believe, and it gave it definitely a unique chiptune sound.
That's cool. I like Crystal Castles.
Yeah, I only think they did it for part of an album, but it was definitely like, and then they did it a couple times after that, but it was like they did this one thing. It's like, oh, this is kind of defining for them at the time. But yeah, I've seen a lot of things. I've actually wanted to take a OG Game Boy and actually make basically do a pass through on it, because it's not super hard to do, and you do get actual proper audio versus trying to emulate like Game Boy audio, which never ever sounds right. It's cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's wild to think about. Like, this thing, was, I mean, it's pretty rudimentary compared to what we can do now, and yet people are still finding uses for it, 30 years later.
Oh, definitely. Like it has ascended past cultural phenomena at this point.
Yeah.
But most importantly, it played games, Stephen.
Yeah, it did. Played a lot of games, a lot of really good ones. And we've got 3 of them to talk about. Well, technically 3 of them. There's, there's some number issues in there. But 3 games that I've chosen that I think they're important, not just for their various series, but for the Game Boy itself. The first of those being The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, released in 1993, developed by, I'm pretty sure developed by the normal Zelda team. Was originally designed to be a port of Link to the Past, and then as they went, they were like, wait a minute, we're just making a whole nother game here. So they did. It was like an immediate hit. Like, even though the graphics weren't ideal on the Game Boy, it was still really well made and a lot of fun. And they released a enhanced version called Link's Awakening DX. Basically, to take advantage of the Game Boy Color's advanced hardware. And I think that one really took off as well. Yeah, I mean, 6 million units between the two. Constantly appearing on lists of best video games of all time. It's one of the more well-regarded Zelda titles, which, I mean, most of them are, but this one is very well received.
Even more so.
Yeah. Yeah, the original does, quote unquote suffer from the Game Boy's limitations of, a green screen, but the fact that it was still successful even with that kind of drawback, like, I would recommend people play the DX version just to see how,
just for a little bit color.
Yeah, for a little bit of color. There's extra content in it, but it's still a very good game. Like, I've talked to a lot of people that actually say this was their favorite Zelda.
Oh, I know a couple people. One of my roommates, he absolutely loves Link's Awakening. It's one of his favorite games ever.
Yeah,
which I believe is fair. It's a very outstanding game.
Oh yeah, and it kind of has a similar thing with Majora's Mask, where it actually it has a lot of similarities. It doesn't take place in Hyrule. It's essentially a direct sequel to the more popular predecessor, in this case Link to the Past, and it actually gets pretty dark.
Yeah, it's kind of a serious game, honestly.
Yeah, like, I mean, the Zelda games have always had some level of gravitas, but this one gets, this one goes places and actually, makes you think, and it, it's a whole thing. It's very, the end of Final Fantasy X.
Right.
Which, you look at it, it's like, did they steal that idea?
I don't know, and it's weird because we'll probably talk a little more about it in a minute, but as serious as the game is, then you have the extra cutesy Switch release of it, which looks like a Playmobil set come to life.
Yes, it absolutely does.
Which I love, by the way. I absolutely love it.
Oh,
it doesn't. It is such a heavy contrast.
Yeah, and I agree. I love the design. I think it looks great. But yeah, like you said, it's a little weird once you actually get into the content of the game.
Yeah, it's suddenly not. It almost feels wrong.
Yeah. One of the more interesting things that when I first played this that I discovered is all the Mario cameos. Because, like, you've got a Yoshi doll, you've got Chain Chomps.
Yeah, you got Chain Chomps, there's Goombas you can fight, there's Piranha Plants in a couple places. It's definitely a weird game.
But, I mean, it's when Zelda gets weird that it gets good.
No, but for real, though. Like, and it's not. And here's the thing: it's not like Mario cameos and references are new to the series.
No.
Well, I mean, at this point they were, but that became a semi-regular thing.
Right. I mean, Link shows up in Super Mario RPG.
Yeah, Link shows up in Super Mario RPG. In Ocarina of Time, you have the Mario Brothers who run the ranch. Essentially, they aren't the Mario Brothers, but boy, do they look like them.
Yeah.
Link's Awakening has got like bootleg Mario and Luigi in it as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, bootleg.
Bootleg. Thank you.
Name, but yeah. But
I forgot about that. And like I said, made by most of the same team that made Link to the Past. Apparently, the director wanted it to feel like Twin Peaks, which I didn't know. Weird.
Okay, that's a little odd.
It doesn't feel like Twin Peaks at all. It goes some weird places, but it doesn't go David Lynch weird.
I mean, very few things can go David Lynch weird. I mean, so one of the most significant things it did was the Rock's Feather, which let Link jump, which I
Yes.
believe
Well-
it's the first time he can jump in a top-down Zelda.
In a top-down, yes. I was about to say, because obviously there was a lot of jumping going on in Zelda 2.
Right, but I think it's the first time he's jumping in a top-down. And then that mechanic appeared again in Minish Cap, and maybe some others. I don't know.
It's actually funny because I played Four Swords. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just played all the way through Four Swords a few months ago, which is the first time I played that before I actually played Link's Awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, Four Swords is not. People are like, oh yeah, it's basically 4-player Link to the Past, and it's super duper not. It's 4-player Link's Awakening.
Yeah.
You get the Rock's Feather, you get the hammer, you get the shovel, you get all the different little strange equipments, but it's a blast. If you haven't played Four Swords, and you can with some friends, it is a rage-inducing time, and it is probably the most fun I've had playing a Zelda game.
Yeah, I actually have 2 copies of Link to the Past Four Swords for that exact reason, so I could play it with somebody.
It's a great time. That's what they see, and that's what they need to put on the Switch shop. Or not on the Switch, but just on the Switch online.
Yeah, because they released a single-player version of Four Swords for the 3DS.
Yeah, and it was terrible because it's not a single-player game.
Well, yeah, but it was like a very limited release, and if you missed it, you missed it.
Yeah, I think I have it.
But yeah, I mean, Link's Awakening it's much more important to the Zelda series than you would think. Because I mean, this is the first one where music plays a big part. Learning special songs on ocarina, fishing. It really was a step forward for the series.
Oh yes.
Oh, I forgot the thing where you can steal from the shop, but it changes your name to Thief for the rest of the game.
Yeah, if you steal, which they don't let you do in the re-release.
Well, I'm sure they wouldn't, but that's always amusing.
You can steal in the Switch version.
Can you? Because he stops you at the.
You have to kind of make sure that he's not facing you when you go out the door, which you've got to stand in like a certain position, and you've got to sneak around him a certain way so that he's looking in a different direction when you leave the door. And if you go back in, he will call you a thief and then kill you with a big laser. and your save game from will permanently label you as a thief, and people will call you thief in the game.
I didn't think they carried it over.
Yeah, so I tried stealing, and it didn't let me.
Yeah,
I just didn't do it right.
There are guides on how to do it online. You've got to be a little bit tricky with it.
That is kind of cool that they still implemented it. They just made it harder.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean it's a great game. I mean I don't know if we want to go into spoiler stuff, but it's a fun time.
And that's the thing, when they re-released it very quickly after release for the Game Boy Color, the DX series of games.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, for people who are interested, not that we are sponsored these people or anything, or co-found with them, but Scott the Woz did a issue or an episode a while back just about the Game Boy in general, and it was very, very good. And he was talking about the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color and the DX games, because there were a lot of DX games where they worked on the Game Boy, but they also worked on the Game Boy Color with slight improvements.
Right.
Link's Awakening had the Color Dungeon, where it actually used colors because that was novel. And then there was
Tetris had a DX version.
Tetris had a DX version because, Tetris in color is, why not? There's nothing wrong with it.
I know at that time they were still like they were still making games that would work on the older systems, but they were designed for the Game Boy Color. Because I know the Pokemon Gold and Silver are one of the big examples of that. They were designed for the Game Boy Color, but they still work on the original Game Boy.
Yeah, those are technically DX style games.
Yeah.
Which I always thought was interesting.
Yeah. Usually noted by the black cartridge.
Yeah. And then also DX slapped on the title because Nintendo loves what's the word I'm looking for? Additions to their titles. Like, oh yeah, well, we made Mario, but we made Mario Advance. Mario 64, Tetris DX. They love it. And I'm not complaining. It's just very Nintendo of them.
It's also very amusing because, this was right around the time of D-Generation X in the WWF.
Right.
So DX kind of meant different things to different people. I mean, like we always say on the show, the music was superb. Duh.
Because it's a Zelda game.
Yeah.
If anything, it's because it's a Zelda game.
Yeah. Let's see. Notable cameos. We've mentioned Yoshi and the Chain Chomp, Goombas, Piranha Plants, Dr. Wright from the SNES version of SimCity was in it.
Really?
Yeah, Dr. Wright is getting catfished by a goat.
Oh, yeah, no, okay, that's right.
Yeah. This goat is pretending to be Princess Peach. And he's writing Dr. Wright love letters as Princess Peach.
Yeah.
You gonna make it, Steven?
I completely forgot about that. But yeah, Wart shows up, Kirby shows up, Prince Richard is a cameo from The Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls.
That sounds like a deep cut.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it at all.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah. But apparently he's a cameo. There's some fourth wall breaks in there where some of the little kids are say it.
They're telling you stuff and they're like, what does that mean? I don't know. I'm just a kid.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
I do kind of like the thing where you go into the dude's house and he won't talk to you, but if you go to the phone booths,
the fucking telephone, then he'll talk to you.
Yeah,
it's like, come on, dude.
I mean, guys just got social anxiety. I can relate to that.
Yeah, but
I can relate. It's amusing that they put it in a game in that way.
And then to top it off, there's telephones,
there's phone booths all over the world.
Well, and it's weird because the whole Breath of the Wild did a whole there's it's an iPad, quite literally.
Yeah.
It's quite literally an iPad.
It was literally a Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
but
I was about this close to getting a skin for my Switch to make it look like the tablet.
But then you go in there, it's like, oh yeah, technology in a Zelda game. How weird is that? But it's like, no, Link's Awakening straight up had telephones.
Yeah, like rotary telephones.
Like actual legit ass telephones. And if that's not weird, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things I wanted to mention about the remake for Nintendo Switch, it's basically the video game equivalent of a shot-for-shot remake.
Yeah. Excellent.
To the point where, in 2020, it is hard to search for stuff about the original game because the Switch game is just called The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, the same as the original.
Yeah, it's not a Link's Awakening plus Ultra or Link's Awakening, but also on a Switch.
Yeah, so it's hard to search for stuff for the original, and when I would look up a specific thing, I would get the Switch version information, and then I could then use that information from that on the original game. Like that,
Yeah.
that was something I ran into multiple times where, if you have the information for one of them, you have the information for the other.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, the Switch version has additional seashells, additional heart pieces, and the introduction of the dungeon builder.
Yes.
And the implementation of those extra things has caused one or two things to be moved around, but 90% of it is still exactly the same. It's just a few additions have caused a little bit of a change around in a few places.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the dialogue is almost word for word. The screens are the same. The dungeon layouts are the same. Like, it's like I said, it's almost exactly a shot-for-shot remake.
I mean, one thing I wanted to ask actually, because I did play the Switch version, one of the characters says, or it might have been like signpost, says the windfish is not a fish. Is that in the original as well? Or was that put there just because people complained that the windfish is not a fish?
I'm not sure.
Because the windfish definitely isn't a fish.
Well, no, it's not.
It's definitely a whale.
So I wasn't sure if they just put that in the Switch version just because people complained about the original.
It's possible. Let me see. And of course, all the screenshots are from the remake.
Yeah, that'll teach you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. It's very possible I may have seen it in the original one and just not even thought about it.
Yeah, because why would you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I'll have to keep an eye out for next time I play through. I think the Switch remake is very well done, well worth checking out if someone wants to play this game. I can also recommend the DX version over the original, just because of the extra features, and also that's the one that's available on the 3DS eShop.
Yeah, I got the Switch version, I think, for £35, like a physical one. And I had a lot of fun with it. I had fun with it for about the first 2/3 of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I was loving it. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and 100% this game and everything. And then I got to the last third, and I'm like, I want this to be over now, because purely because of the last 2 or 3 dungeons. I wouldn't say that they are difficult, but they are frustrating as hell, because the way you've got to navigate these last couple dungeons, one of them you've got to go back and forth pressing switches, moving a ball around everywhere. Another one you've got to drop down into holes in certain places, and you'll like go down a level in the dungeon. And it just gets so complicated in like what you've got to do. I spent like 2 hours in, I think, the Face Shrine, and then I just said, fuck it, I'm just going to go back to the entrance, look up a guide, and just follow it kind of like word for word, because I was just getting so pissed off with it.
Yeah, and then that does happen.
That happens in basically every Zelda, though. That's nothing new.
Yeah.
There's always a bullshit dungeon in the game that is just like, I mean, Ocarina of Time is traditionally the water dungeon, even though I don't think it's the worst thing. I always end up missing something. I have to cycle the water like 3 times. The water temple in Majora's Mask is bullshit. The Twilight Princess, the fire temple, has the really slow magnet feet parts. It's like it's a cool gimmick, but it's also so...
It takes so long.
It's so long to get through. Like, there's always something that just makes you want to pull your hair out.
Yeah. Skyward Sword had the I think the frustrating dungeon in that one was the one where you're manipulating time. I think that one had some iffy spots. It's been a long time since I played it, but yeah. So most Zeldas have that dungeon, even though, like you said, some of them aren't as bad as people make them out to be.
The final boss as well, I found really frustrating because it's got several different phases, and each phase you've got to use kind of like a different kind of attack, and by the time you've worked out what kind of attack you need to use, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to go back to the start of the dungeon and do all the little maze crap again.
Yeah.
So again, I had to just look up a guide because it was just pissing me off.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great game. It well worth checking out no matter which version you play.
I would personally, honestly recommend the Switch version because they're all going to cost about the same.
Yeah,
this one allows you to play it on a modern big screen, and while I know some people are off-put by the style, they don't like the cartoony playmobileness. I mean, a lot of people didn't like the cartoony look of Wind Waker either, but that stood the test of time and is many people's favorite version of Link.
Yeah. And the Switch version also benefits from more buttons.
Yes, absolutely.
So, like the big thing for me was your sword and shield are always accessible, and then you have items you can use.
Yeah.
Instead of having to have item slots taken up by your sword and shield.
Yeah, and it's useful as well to have Rock's Feather always bound, so you've got jump button as well.
So you can always jump, or you can always have a bow and arrow, your bow on hand, or something.
Yes.
Like, it's one of those things that you don't appreciate until you do.
Yeah, like it's hard to go back to the original after you played the Switch version. But that's okay, because the Switch version is basically the same thing.
Yeah, so it's not like you're playing a different game. You're just playing a different looking game.
Yeah. All right, so I think that's about all we have for Link's Awakening. So I think we'll take a quick musical break and go into the next game. The next game, or rather games, we're going to be talking about is Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. I mean, we've talked about these a little bit before, but I can't do a Game Boy episode and not talk about Pokemon. Because, frankly, they are, I believe, the best-selling games for the Game Boy ever. I think Tetris might have it beat a little bit.
Tetris might be a bit of a cheat because I think they include the versions that you got for free with the console.
Yeah,
it's very similar to saying like Wii Sports was the best-selling Wii game, when of course it was, because it came with every single Wii.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure, I don't have exact figures here, but I mean, from what I understand, Pokemon Red and Blue were, if they're not the best-selling games on the Game Boy, they're very close to the top. They are like top 3. And I mean, we've talked about Pokemania. We've gone through, most of the stories for that. I want to put the focus here on the actual games themselves, Red and Blue, because these games, you could say these games changed the world, and I guess we're also talking about Green, although nobody outside of Japan got Green. But these games were huge. They were massively significant for the Game Boy. They launched, one of the biggest entertainment franchises of all time. Pokemon Red and Blue are not that fun as games when you compare them to later entries in the series.
No, they are a very, very brutal time.
And I mean, I always make jokes. Pokemon Red and Blue are held together with paper clips and dreams. It really is true.
but it's not like they weren't good games. I can say that they're brutal as fuck. They just, if you make mistakes, they punish you for it. It's not like they're substantially more difficult. It's not like the game is pitched against you in a way that other games aren't.
It's not NES hard.
It's not NES hard, exactly. It's not meant to make you angry. It just expects you to get good pretty quick.
Right.
Like the way, like, and there, it lacked so many just quality of life improvements that later games had.
Yes.
And I don't even mean like even the most modern games, but even going to just Ruby Sapphire, there were so many little tweaks and changes to the game that just improved it as a whole.
Yeah.
It is very clear that Red and Blue are the first iteration.
Right. And like I said, they're very important games. They're, probably two of the most significant games of all time. But there are better ways to experience these games. There are better ways to experience this story.
Well, and yeah, and if you want to do that, because so far, the interesting theme going on here, not Red and Blue, but Red and Green got Game Boy Advance remakes.
And then if you want to get technical, Pokemon Let's Go is a Pokemon Yellow remake.
Yeah, it's a reimagining of Pokemon Yellow, the most modern rendition of the game.
Yeah.
But like if you want a better experience with the Gen 1, I would play Red and Green.
Yeah, I would highly recommend Fire Red and Leaf Green over the originals. Largely because you have, first of all, you have all the typings that existed at that time. Also, like you said, just some of the quality of life improvements. Running shoes. Running shoes was huge for the games because it was a way to move faster when you couldn't use the bike.
Right. You can't use a bike here.
Yeah. Now's not the time for that.
Fuck you, I can ride a bike anywhere I want to.
And plus, one of the advantages of playing the newer versions of it is, and I know this is, this is more of an old school Pokemon thing and not as common nowadays, but if you say get attached to that team and these Pokemon that you collected, you can move them to modern storage from these games. Now, obviously, it's much easier from Let's Go because you can just put it straight into Pokemon Home. The Gen 3 games have a whole lot of hoops to jump through, but you can do it.
You can do it if you really want to get all the cables and all the copies of the game you need to make those transfers. You can do it.
Yeah. Like, I haven't done it yet, but I'm actually I'm playing through Pokemon Emerald. I've been playing it recently, and I'm going to take, my quote unquote Hall of Fame team out of that and move it forward through the games just to do it. I love that you can still do that. That was one of the main things that pulled me out of the Pokemon fervor was the Game Boy Advance games. You couldn't transfer from the Game Boy games just because the software wasn't compatible. And I was very invested in that mechanic of being able to bring your old team forward and being able to still use them.
I'm surprised that they couldn't find a way to let you transfer from Game Boy to Game Boy Advance, because you can use Game Boy cartridges in a Game Boy Advance. Surely there would be some kind of internal memory that you could move this data to and then be picked up by one of the Advance games.
I have no idea. I know the software was completely overhauled for the Game Boy Advance games. And I think it was somewhere in there that they had to sacrifice. It was either while they were making them or they knew going in that they weren't going to be able to be compatible, because it was it was one of the things people were clamoring for, and they just couldn't do it for some reason. I don't remember why. But I mean, that's also why Fire Red and Leaf Green exist, because Ruby and Sapphire didn't have all the Pokemon, so they put out Fire Red and Leaf Green to fill in the gaps, so that if you had, all 4 games, you could have everything on the Game Boy Advance games.
Right. It was kind of like what they did back in was that Gen 5, I think, with XY and Omega
6
Ruby. Or that Gen 6 then?
Yeah.
They did in Gen 6 where they're just like, hey, look, a lot of these, it's so hard to get and transfer any of these Pokemon now between
the Game Boy Advance.
But between these 2 games, or these 2 pairs of games, you can get every single legendary.
Yeah.
If you really want them.
And that was great. Fantastic.
So it was a similar case back at the rise of the Game Boy Advance, too.
Yeah.
Where they're just like, man, we know we've made a shortcoming here, but, do this. Also, please buy more Pokemon games.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it's they're basically printing money at that point. One of the most interesting things is if you do that big transfer, you take something from Game Boy Advance to modern storage, it actually has a little comment in there that this thing has come a long way, which I just think that's very interesting. But yeah, I mean, the original Red and Blue, again, like, good games held back by...
They're games.
Yeah. Well, they're good games held back by technology, which happens all the time.
No, yeah. That, you know what? That's a very fair thing to say, and I will be a little less critical of it, because I've made that statement before, where it's like, this game is definitely limited by its hardware.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, to be fair, specifically with Red, Blue, and Green, and Yellow, that these games were baby's first steps.
Yeah. They were figuring this franchise out. I don't think it's a stretch to say that it did better than they expected.
No, obviously the Pokemania happened because of these games.
Yeah. And
it is the world's longest running fad.
Yeah.
Fucking 22 years later? No.
It depends on when you start counting. Because the originals released in 1996 in Japan. We saw them in 98.
Yeah, because I was thinking of the US release.
Yeah,
24 years later, it's the longest running fad. And I believe we said that the last time we talked about Pokemon, but it's still true.
Yeah.
I always thought like Pokemon was like a 94 thing.
Yeah, I thought it was like early 90s Pokemon.
But no,
Nope.
I remember now because my brother was, and I think I've also said this, my brother was going to get Pokemon, he was going to get a Game Boy Color, and then he was going to get Pokemon Red and Blue. And my mom was going to get it, my parents were going to get it, and then being in a conservative household, of course, the whole, mostly here in the US, I don't know if it happened really over in Europe, but there was the whole, like, evangelical backlash against the game because...
The word evolution was in it.
Because, 2 words. There was the, I remember these talking points was, it was supported evolution, so it was a very much satanic game.
Yeah.
And 2, Lavender Town.
Oh, yeah.
Supporting the homosexual agenda, and it's like, looking back on that's like, wow, that's, one, at the time, that's a pretty ridiculous claim. And then going back, looking back at that now 20 years later, you go, oh, wow, that's a real cringy argument against the game. Because one of the towns was named Lavender Town.
Yeah.
Was that the only thing backing that up? Because I didn't see any kind of, like, homosexual reference in Lavender Town.
No, there wasn't. It was just literally the town was called Lavender Town. It was purple. The color purple was associated with gay people for some reason. That's literally it. That's all. Apparently, they stole the color purple, and that was their first attack on humanity back in the mid '90s.
I would have associated it more with Prince myself, but okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, right. But I mean, that's grasping at straws right there. Because it's purple.
I mean, like the evolution thing it's a simple misunderstanding.
Yeah,
because obviously Pokemon evolution isn't actual evolution; it's metamorphosis.
Yeah, but it's just very. It's just very. It was a time I remember. Then they decided not to buy the games because of those concepts.
Yeah.
And like even I, as a child at the time, I was like 9, was like, I'm pretty sure the color purple is just the color purple.
Yeah.
Like you can make the argument for evolution all you want, but it's the color purple. And it's not even violet, like because I believe the specific color that was being associated was like a royal, like a violet, like a super royal purple.
Mm-hmm.
And in all actuality, and then it's lavender, so it's not even the right color. But
yeah,
that's So yeah, along with Pokemania, apparently Pokemon brought plenty of controversy as well, as long as you were evangelical.
I mean, it'd be like that sometimes. That's all I can really say.
And I didn't even grow up in the Bible Belt. That's where I live now, but I grew up in Southwest Alaska.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Louisiana, which is very, very Catholic. Not like here where it's all Baptist. But yeah, like I knew about the controversy, but we were kind of. I mean, first of all, my family is very pro video games to start with. Like they were, I don't want to say they were smart enough to not get roped in, but like they kind of were.
It's like, well, it's funny because like my parents were not very pro video game at all. They really didn't like them. So like that probably wasn't a very hard decision to go like to sway them from not buying Pokemon for my brother.
Well, and the other element of that, and this is slightly off topic, but my parents lived through the D&D Satanic Panic.
Oh, so yeah, okay.
And like they introduced us to D&D. Like they went through that whole thing when they were kids. So when it came around for us, they were like, okay, this is the same thing we dealt with. We're not going to play into this.
Are you saying that your parents taught you witchcraft?
Okay. I mean, if you want to get technical,
every generation has this kind of like
they taught you how to worship Satan.
Like in the 80s when I was growing up, it was video nasties.
Yeah,
70s was D&D, 90s Pokemon. Every generation's got
Harry Potter.
Mm.
Oh yeah, Harry Potter was a thing for a second, which is really. Really funny to me because I remember my parents, and I'm not a fan of Harry Potter. I just don't like the series. It has nothing to do with what it stands for or anything. That's fine. I just find it boring. I don't like it. And people can tear me apart for it, but I don't like it. Now my mom, on the other hand, she was like, "Oh, they're wizards and witches, and it's witchcraft, and you can't have that because that's evil." And
never mind.
This is glorifying it. You know what she loved, though?
What?
Lord of the Rings.
With the wizards.
With literally the big bad wizard who might as well be the devil himself.
Yeah.
And then you have a wizard who literally is Jesus.
Oh,
and
so funny.
It's just like, so you don't like Harry Potter because wizards, but you really love Lord of the Rings because wizards.
And that's even setting aside the fact that both of those franchises, their depiction of magic and wizardry is about as far from actual
satanic witchcraft as you can get.
Or not,
And
not even
I
satanic.
I don't even want to say
Just-
satanic witchcraft, just witchcraft in general.
Yeah.
They have nothing to do with it.
Like, most witchcraft is, hey, I want my plants to grow.
Right?
It's like, I'm just going to, throw some herbs on my garden to keep some of the pests away. Like that's what most witchcraft boils down to.
Well, and like even in real life, the age of witchcraft and going against it, it's like, oh yeah, well, it's like, oh, you're summoning spirits, but then like the Catholic Church attacked witchcraft, and it was like people trying to make legit medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Like people of legitimate like herbal science are like, man, I can do this and this, and they can make a potion, they can make a medicine. It's like, no, that's not natural. God wants you to die. It's like, thanks, Catholic Church, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, so point being, it wasn't witchcraft. It's not evolution, and Pokemon most certainly is not pushing the gay agenda. Whatever the gay agenda might be, I thought it was just they want to get married, and it finally happened, at least in the U.S.
Yeah, well,
and a few other major countries. It finally happened a while back, and it's like, okay, so they won. Are you going to go back and say it was Pokemon that made that happen because they had a purple town? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's
that would not be fair to say Pokemon did that.
No. What it did do is kick off the freaking firestorm of the century in terms of media.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
it's huge now.
Yeah, and like and I think you're absolutely correct to say it's it's the longest running fad. Certainly when it comes to video games, and maybe even expanding beyond that. Because I mean,
the Pokemon anime has ran for like 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, and like there's other things that have kept going, like Power Rangers is still actively running, but Power Rangers is nowhere near what it used to be.
Oh, absolutely not. And if that's not to say it's bad. I mean, Power Rangers is its own kind of bad.
Oh no, Power Rangers Beast Morphers, the current season is incredible.
Oh, is it?
But oh yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. But the fan base is not there like it used to be. Whereas with Pokemon, they still probably have at least half of what they started with.
And like people who were there from the beginning. Yeah, people who were there from the very beginning, still holding on. And
right, so Pokemon probably still has a good chunk of those original fans, plus all the new fans that come in with every iteration. Like, Pokemon has sustained its momentum through all this time.
It's done more than sustained its momentum since Pokemon Red and Blue. It has grown. We have, like I said, the 20 years of the anime, we've had half a dozen animated movies or better. It seems like every time there's a new generation, every time there's a new generation of Pokemon, we get at least one movie out of it, probably two.
There's like 24 movies.
Is there really that many?
Yes.
And then I mean, the card game has not gone anywhere. I don't know if it's gotten bigger, but it sure as hell hasn't gotten smaller.
Yeah, it's still around.
It's still going. Like, my friend just got into the Pokemon card game because it's kind of like Magic the Gathering light to him.
Yes.
And he enjoys it because it's very simple to just run. I mean, you have so many Pokemon offshoots as far as games go. This is actually beginning to sound a lot like just a repeat of when we talked about Pokemon Let's Go. And then, I mean, I don't know if all y'all watched Detective Pikachu.
Yes.
Yeah, it was great. I love it.
That's a really good film.
That's a really good film. And that's
Very
weird because it's a video game film. So, like, I never expected I'd say that.
Ryan Reynolds carries it.
Yes.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
But yeah, it is a decent film.
Like, I'm not into guys, but if Ryan Smith, wow, no, if Ryan Reynolds walked up to my door and knocked it, I opened it, and it was Ryan Reynolds, and he's like, "Hey man, will you give me a kiss?" I would do it. Like, just straight up, and just be like, "Yeah, I'll do it for you."
Yeah.
But you got to say something funny.
But yeah, so, like I said, these games are hugely important, and again, not just for the franchise, but for the Game Boy. Like, do we think the Game Boy would have done as well without these games? Probably not as well. I mean, Pokemon was what got me to get a Game Boy. And I know there's plenty of others that are just like me in that regard. Like
I don't think the Game Boy would have done so well.
This was definitely a system seller.
Yes, because like the Game Boy was doing fine for, closing, at least in Japan, that would have been 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then 7 years. Like it was definitely holding on. It wasn't about to go anywhere, but then this game dropped. This game series dropped.
Yeah.
And it got 2 different generations on it. I mean, it got 2 games. It got 3 games, 1 Japan, 1 Western. And then it got another offshoot game that tied in closer to the anime, which was Pokemon Yellow. Other than that, it's mostly the same game. It just it switches up a couple things, so it ties closer to the anime.
Yes.
And which was a just brilliant move.
That's what got me in.
Just absolutely brilliant move on their part to basically make free money.
Yep.
But because of Pokemon, I guarantee it revitalized the Game Boy in a way that they were not anticipating. Not that the Game Boy was dying, but it basically made it brand new again. It meant that they could keep selling dated hardware that was now way, way cheaper to make.
Yep.
At more and more profit.
And
you know that helped. Know that helped them out because they're making all this profit and keeping interest in the handheld system. Because 2003 was the last year's Bruce. We're into is that like Gen 4 or 5 of consoles officially?
Yeah, Game Boy Color is part of the 5th generation.
Yeah, of just consoles in general. And they held on, and then they made the Game Boy Color, which was a minor upgrade.
Yeah,
but still definitely a very profitable piece of hardware, and they could just keep making very basic games on this. Yeah. And of course, it's not like Nintendo owned it, but I mean the Pokemon Company. Yeah. And Game Freak, it's definitely a almost purely exclusive, save the one Pokemon game that happened on that one weird Sega Coleco, or whatever the hell it was called.
So bizarre.
Nintendo wasn't dying.
No.
But I will make the claim in alternate history, if Nintendo was dying, this would have been their Final Fantasy title.
Yes.
Easily.
So...
if Nintendo was about to file Chapter 11, this would have saved them.
Speaking of Final Fantasy, Pokemon games in Japan sold combined, it looks like 4.69 million units. They sold 3.65 million in 1997, which made Pokemon collectively the best-selling game of the year, passing Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, damn.
Let's see. So, ultimately sold 10.23 million in Japan. Worldwide sales have reached over 31 million copies. And then, Gold and Silver sold 23 million and was the absolute best-selling game for the Game Boy Color. So, yeah.
Impressive.
Like you said, this didn't save the Game Boy, but it could have.
It could have. It could have saved Nintendo as a company if they were in that weird position, which they weren't. But that's how big Pokemon is, and despite Pokemon Red and Blue being kind of rough games, and having some really cheap gym leaders, I won't go too deep into that, but some really cheap moves with gym leaders and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely the game being pitched against you a little harder than later ones. no matter what Pokemon you picked, your opponent always picked your weakness.
Right.
Which is, that the stage one's he's not super hard to beat, but he's definitely harder than fighting your rival in your first fight in all the other Pokemon games.
Yeah, but yeah, they're worthy of, they're worth taking note of, but if you're gonna play them, I recommend Fire Red and Leaf Green. If you absolutely want to play the original Red and Blue, get yourself a 3DS and pick up the virtual console version.
Yes, because they are very much available. And I believe they even have wireless trade if you have other people who want to play.
Wireless trading, and the virtual console versions can move Pokemon into modern storage. You can actually transfer from the virtual console versions to Pokemon Bank, and then from Bank to Pokemon Home. So, if you absolutely want to check out the original Red, Blue, and Yellow, get it on the virtual console. Or play Fire Red and Leaf Green, which I believe is available on the Wii U eShop.
It's going to be a sad day when that eShop shuts down.
Yeah, that's, trying to pick things up while it's still there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's about all we got for Pokemon Red and Blue.
Mostly just turned into a conversation about Pokemania again.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen most of the times that Pokemon comes up on this show.
Because I believe it happened when we talked about Crystal. It happened when we talked about Let's Go.
Kind of makes me feel bad that I'm not really a fan of the series.
Like I said, I'm not a huge fan, but I've picked up every few iterations. I'll pick up a copy. Like as soon as they announce that Garchomp is in Sword and Shield, I'm going to pick it up.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Sword. I haven't beaten it yet, but they gave my boy Farfetch'd an evolution. I was all about that.
It's about time too.
But so Matt, you and I have Final Fantasy, which the others do not care about. So, all right, so that's all we have for Pokemon. We'll take a quick musical break and go into our last game for this month. Our last game is Metroid 2 Return of Samus. Now, this was a game that a lot of people missed completely. The original Metroid came out on the NES, and then everyone thought, the sequel will be on the SNES. And they booted up Super Metroid, and it's like, there was a whole game that happened in between. Metroid 2 is, in terms of the lore and the story of Metroid, is arguably one of the most important games in the series.
It really kind of is.
I mean, so, it was released in 1991. Oh, wow, it came here first.
Really?
It was released in North America in 91 and Japan and Europe in 92. Interesting.
Huh.
But yeah, developed by Nintendo R&D 1, the folks that made the Game Boy and the original Metroid. Gunpei Yokoi as producer, the widely renowned as the father of the Game Boy in some circles. It introduced a lot of things that became series staples, like the big shoulder balls for the Varia suit were introduced here. There were a lot of things that were done specifically to differentiate between things on the black and white or green screen, like the gun opening up for the missiles, the different design of the Varia suit,
the plasma beam.
Yeah, the plasma beam,
the jump ball, which actually disappeared for a while.
Yeah, it wasn't in Super, was it?
And the spider ball as well.
The spider ball is the one that annoys me because that was a brilliant idea that they never used again.
They didn't use it until Metroid Prime.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. But yeah, so Metroid 2, the game is Samus goes to the Metroid homeworld, SR-388, and exterminates the motherfuckers.
Yeah, just kills them all. She is sent literally after the events of Metroid. The Galactic Federation says, "Wow, these things are way too dangerous to be kept alive. Go get them. Just kill them all." And you go, "Okay." and you go and you kill them all. Like, there's no space pirates in the game.
Nope.
There's no big bosses in the game. It's a really weird feeling game. Compared to the first Metroid, it's almost completely unique. It's kind of linear, but only semi-linear, because like you go into an area and you have to thoroughly explore an area and find all the Metroids, and then you can move into the next zone.
Yeah, and it, I mean, honestly, I think it still holds up as a game. Like, I still really enjoy it. I enjoy it more than the original Metroid.
I mean, most people do. The original Metroid is a really, really just hard game.
It's hard to play.
It's a hard, because all the rooms look the same, or at least all your like vertical chambers look the same. It's super easy to get lost. I've talked to several people who have like played the game and they've busted out graphing paper to figure out where the hell they are.
I have a strategy guide with maps in it that I use to get through the original.
I got about halfway through the game a few years back and I had to use like actual maps.
Yeah.
Which the game does not have, and Metroid 2 also does not have.
Right, and what I did for Metroid 2 was I actually printed out two maps. One was a detailed map that actually shows everything. The other one was the kind of map you see in the other 2D games that's just like the blocks, and I actually colored that in as I explored different rooms, just like it does in the other 2D games.
Nice.
And that helped the experience a lot. And then going forward, I can just reference the other map and kind of know about where I am.
And where you've been and what you've done.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, it's a really good game. Of special note is Metroid as a series is always, done well with atmosphere, but this game especially, I think, because you've got, you go on this quest to destroy all the Metroids, and you see things like, there's all this indigenous life.
Yeah, all this weird local wildlife.
Yeah, but as you get deeper in and closer to the Metroid's lair, there's less and less of it, and the only stuff that you see down there is stuff that is, it's stuff that's so small and unnoticeable because they have to avoid the Metroids.
Well, and also one thing I took notice of, and it's like when I was first playing it, is the deeper into the planet you go, the deeper into this cave system, the weirder it gets.
Yes.
Like on the surface, in the higher up in the caves, you have like your little frog bite chomp guys and some bat things that fly around a little bit, and that you see a lot of like surface looking creatures. And then as you get farther into these cave systems, they just start getting really weird. It becomes more and more of that.
Kind of like Deep Ocean, then. I mean, like
exactly. Like
you
Deep
go
Ocean.
down, the more fucked up things get.
Yeah, and like super deep cave life, where it's like, oh yeah, we totally have crickets here that have nails on their legs and no eyeballs because they can't see anyway. It's like, oh okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, I needed that.
Yeah. So then the other thing, the other big atmospheric thing was, you go down there, you fight the Metroid Queen, you kill the Metroid Queen, and then, the baby Metroid from Super Metroid hatches and imprints on Samus as its mother. And you just go back up to the surface, but there's nothing to fight. It's very subdued. There's light music in the background, but not overpowering. Mm-hmm. And it's a very introspective kind of thing. It gives you time to just think about everything you've just been through as you get back to your ship.
Well, and especially unlike Metroid and Super Metroid to follow, and also, now that I think about it, Metroid Fusion and most of the other games that have you leaving after the boss fight, it's not rushed.
It's not a big bombastic escape sequence.
There's no timer. The planet's not about to explode. you've accomplished your mission, and now you get to just leave. And that's also really weird. Speaking of atmosphere and also music, because while the music isn't super prevalent in the game, what they do have, I feel, is very appropriate.
It's well used.
Yeah, it's very well used. There's only a couple different themes in the game. You have whenever you come across a Metroid, it's very tense music. And the first time you come across a Metroid, you don't realize that it's actually properly a Metroid.
Right.
Because this is where they first introduced the evolution and metamorphosis of Metroids as a thing.
Right.
And they turn it. They're not these little blobs that eat stuff. They're legit monsters.
Yeah, and like, you know, in the very, very early areas, you've got some of that, you know, like what you'd expect, the heroic do kind of thing. And then as you get deeper, you have less music, and you start feeling that tension.
Yeah, it almost starts turning into a ambient music instead of hero music.
Yeah.
One thing I did like is whenever you enter a chamber that houses a Metroid, there is no wildlife.
There's nothing else in that room.
Because the Metroid already done killed it.
Yeah. And that continues even after you've killed the Metroids. There is nothing else in that room.
Yeah. Which is nice. It's just a very nice feel.
One of the other things Metroid 2 introduced that became a serious staple is the space jump. Yes.
No, space jump was in... was not the space jump? No, that was just the high jump boots.
Yeah, it was just high jump. Metroid 2 is the first one to have the space jump.
You are correct. Oh, I wanted to ask you, because you've beaten the game, when you get to the very... Spoiler alert. When you get to the end, and because it's not until the very end that you actually get to fight the larval Metroids.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes, because you've cleared out all of the Metroids, you have a little Metroid counter that ticks down as you kill Metroids.
Yeah, it gets down to 1, and then...
It gets down to 1, and then suddenly it goes, do-da-da-bum, and it recounts up like 10 more Metroids.
Yeah, it goes up to I think it goes up to 9.
And then you have to Ice Beam, which at this point you might have a Plasma Beam on you. Because you get a couple opportunities to grab the Ice Beam, but you might actually have a Plasma Beam on you.
Yeah.
And there's actually a little secret area you can find or travel through, and you can pick up a Ice Beam again.
Yeah.
And you go through, because the larval Metroids are weak to... Well, regular Metroids are weak to missiles. Larval, they need to be frozen first.
Yeah.
Still. But that moment when you go through and you fight all of your... and you go and kill all of your larval Metroids... When you kill the last one, and then the music just in that room just switches over to the impending doom droning, it's almost not even music.
Yeah.
It's just the same chord over and over and over as you're approaching the Metroid Queen.
Yeah.
I thought that was absolutely fantastic for setting the tone of what was about to happen. Like, this is you are about to fight the biggest bad.
Yeah. Incredibly well done.
Also, how did you fight the Metroid Queen? Just real quick. Because there's 3 different techniques you can use.
I did the go inside and drop a bomb.
Yeah, because I think that's the most damage you can possibly do.
Yeah.
But if you because the very first time I beat the Metroid Queen or played against is because she's sitting in the back and she snaps her head all over the room, but if you space jump up against the wall, she can't hurt you.
Yeah. You just have
and she'll snap at you, and then you can launch a couple missiles, and you space jump, and she'll snap at you 1 or 2 times, and then you can launch a couple missiles. And you can basically just cheese it, and that's the slowest way to fight it. Or I found out later that, and this leads into the whole crawling into her mouth, you can also just stand against the wall and start spamming missiles as soon as she lunges at you, because when you shoot her in the mouth, she freezes.
Yeah.
And if you have insane mashing skills, you can kill her in 3 cycles.
Yeah.
Just really wreck her. But then, yeah, years and years later, I found out about the whole roll up into her mouth and plant a few bombs, and like that's like 2 cycles and she's done.
Yeah. It's wild.
It's super damaging, which I guess makes enough sense. But yeah, I never had an instruction booklet. I never had a Nintendo Power on it or anything like that. So that was something I just didn't know about.
Yeah, see, I had watched a series of videos about the Metroid series, and the guy in that brought up the bomb dropping. So I knew about that going in. It was just a matter of getting there.
Well, see, I don't think I knew about that until after I had played Other M, because that's how you do damage to the Metroid Queen in Other M. Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert. You have to do a series of things, and then you stun her, and her face hits the ground, and you have to morph ball and crawl in and drop like a power bomb or something like that.
Yeah.
And you have to do that like 5 or 6 times. So, carrying stuff around.
Yeah. So, it's hard to discuss Metroid 2 without then talking about the remakes, plural. There's the fan remake, another Metroid 2 remake, because for a while there were a whole bunch of people remaking Metroid 2 because it was arguably the one that most needed a remake and didn't have one. And eventually all the other projects dropped off until AM2R was the only one that actually got to quote-unquote release. And then Nintendo killed it immediately and released Metroid Samus Returns for the 3DS.
Yeah, not that.
Year.
Yeah, it wasn't that long afterward that they had filed, because AM2R had been in development for years.
Yeah, it had been in development
as a
for like
fan
10
project.
Years.
And then they finally finished it. Like had it like we're done. This is a complete game, and Nintendo was like, "Yeah, nice try."
Yeah, 3 days. They killed it in 3 days, and then a year later they released their remake, which was close enough that they had to have already been working on it when AM2R was released. But at the same time, it's like, really?
Well, the thing is with like Nintendo doing the cease and desist thing, I think they time it in a way that it's kind of still available. They will wait until it's been released, and once it's on the internet, it stays on the internet somewhere.
Right.
They could have at any point during that development sent a cease and desist and stopped it from releasing. The fact that Nintendo always wait until after it's released, I think it's kind of like they're giving like a little bit of give and take. Personally, I mean, that's how I see it. Nintendo are kind of
like Nintendo they don't outright hate their fans and stuff like that, but they also don't want not Nintendo stealing Nintendo thunder.
Like legally, they have to protect their IPs.
Yes.
So they can't just do nothing once it's been released. But like I said, I think they will purposefully wait until something is out before shutting it down, because then it'll be available somewhere.
Well, and what they do is I think AM2R did this, and I know for a fact Pokemon Uranium did this. They release on Friday night after Nintendo's offices have closed, so that Nintendo can't do anything until Monday morning. Now, I would be with you in that they're not trying to shut down everything out of spite. They're just doing it because legally they have to protect their IP. But then they told the Game Awards that they would sue them if they allowed AM2R or Pokemon Uranium to appear on the show. And they didn't have to do that. That was a choice they made.
Maybe I am giving Nintendo a bit
much
credit in saying they are.
That's what I was saying is Nintendo doesn't want to just outright hate on people who are doing remakes and reworks of Nintendo product out of love for what Nintendo makes. They're not trying to undercut Nintendo here. These projects are love letters to Nintendo.
Yes.
That is the only way you can describe that.
Especially AM2R,
especially AM2R, but at the same time Nintendo acknowledges that, but like Nintendo was going to release a their own
unofficial
Metroid,
remake.
an unofficial remake. Nintendo has tons of actually with the Pokemon. That might have been the Pokemon Company, who is their own legal crazy. Like they don't respect their fans at all. In some cases,
Yeah.
like they're really protective of their IPs. But then even then with the whole Mario Maker and people having like the build your own Mario games and custom speedruns, Nintendo didn't give a shit about it until
they were making their own.
until they were about to make their own Mario Maker. Then suddenly they were kind of cracking down on things here and there. And I think it's because Nintendo appreciates, but they don't want, like I said, they don't want not Nintendo stealing Nintendo thunder.
Yes. Now, here's what I think Nintendo
which is a little shitty, but
and what they should have done is exactly what Sega did. You know, you have the guy that makes, you know, a wildly popular Sonic fan game. They tell him, "Stop it. You know, come work for us." And he makes Sonic Mania.
Exactly.
They need to hire Milton Guasti, the guy who made AM2R, to make 2D Metroids.
Because he did such a good job.
He did an incredible job. So AM2R it is a comprehensive remake of Metroid 2 that includes elements of all the 2D Metroids. With, you know, one of the most significant differences, the jumping is very tight, like it is in Metroid Zero Mission. It has the maps, it has the mini bosses, it has data logs. You know, he went above and beyond with this remake.
Like I like Return of Samus. No, wait, Samus Returns. Which one is it?
Return of Samus is the original.
Okay, so I like Samus Returns. I haven't beaten it, but I do enjoy it. It feels a little goofy in some spots because it's kind of like a pseudo twin stick.
Yeah.
But I don't hate it. I don't hate that. I like that. I just felt like it could have been done a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very solid remake. There's only one boss that really makes me mad, and it's the fucking mining machine.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand, and I hate that boss. Like, it's clever, but also, fuck that boss.
Yeah.
But I feel like AM2R is a superior game. Like, on every single front.
I mean, I started playing Metroid 2, the original, because I bought it on the 3DS eShop. And I was enjoying it when I was playing it until I booted up AM2R. And I was like, wow, this is a vast improvement. This is a lot faster. It has a map, which is...
The map is one of the biggest things ever.
Yeah.
And that it gave improved. Yeah.
You play that version and then you try going back to the original and it's like, this just feels sluggish and wrong.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same way. I mean, even Super Metroid, because Super Metroid was sort of a sequel / reboot. It was both at the same time.
Yeah.
But you go to Zero Mission and you play through Zero Mission and it is just fantastic all the way through. It looks great, and AM2R uses all the recycles a ton of assets from Zero Mission. It was built off the same exact engine. But they you play the game, and if you had played the original Metroid first, you can appreciate it even though it is balls hard. Yeah. You can appreciate the game. But if you go and play Zero Mission, and then you go back and play the original Metroid, it's not fun anymore.
Yeah,
anything you enjoyed about it, unless you just like being lost. That's the game you want. Is I'm Lost Simulator.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned,
classic Metroid loses everything.
Yeah, unless it's a thing of reviewing or, you know, wanting to get that specific experience, you know, there's no reason to play Metroid over Metroid Zero Mission. Now, that said, I actually don't feel the same about Metroid 2 and AM2R or Samus Returns, because I feel like, you know, and this is a kind of a theme running here where all these games have 3 versions, but I feel like all 3 versions have their strengths. All 3 versions are worth playing. And I think the biggest difference that I noticed in terms of my experience is each one of these made me want to play a different Metroid game. Metroid 2 made me want to go to the next game and play Super Metroid. AM2R made me want to play Zero Mission because I hadn't played it at that point and see, the gap that I had in my Metroid experience. Samus Returns made me want to play AM2R because, AM2R might be my favorite 2D Metroid, period. Because it's, basically the culmination of everything 2D Metroid in one package.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it up to a point. I mean, personally, I found it a bit too difficult. I mean, I'm shit at video games, as I'm sure I've brought up like hundreds of times on this show. I was enjoying it until I hit Roadblock. The Turtle Bro. I don't know his proper name, but I'll just call him Turtle Bro. He goes up into a shield with spikes on it, and he's a real pain in the arse. You've got to hit him into these electric things, and I couldn't get past that boss. I was enjoying it up to then, but I couldn't get past that.
Oh, what is that you're talking about? He rolls up into the thing.
Yeah, he was actually introduced in Metroid 2.
Yeah, he's the jump ball guardian, but he has a name.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
I'm Googling it because I want to know. Because I'm like that.
He's after you defeat the 4 Metroids that are in that certain area. And then I think he's the next guy after that, I think.
Arachnus. Yeah, Arachnus is his name.
Well, yeah, I couldn't get past him. But I did kind of see a lot of what you were talking about in terms of the atmosphere and the environmental storytelling was kind of really solid. The music was really solid. I wish I was better at it. I think I said the same thing about Super Metroid as well. I wish I was better at it because it does sell the desolate sci-fi horror theme that it's going for really well. So it is appealing to me in that particular way. It's just I found it a bit too difficult.
Yeah, and that's I managed to get through all 3 of these actually. But yeah, they are challenging, and it's the Metroid series has always had some level of that challenge. I just I enjoy these so much that I was just powering through to figure it out and be able to break through. These games are real good, y'all.
Yeah, no. Metroid 2 was definitely one of my favorite Metroid. It still is one of my favorite Metroid games to this day, and I mean the original.
Yeah, I mean it's and like I said, the original is still worth revisiting. Samus Returns is worth playing, but I'm not a big fan of the 2.5D setup. And the biggest, I feel like the biggest quote unquote crime with Samus Returns is they nuked a lot of the atmosphere. You see those bat enemies you see on the surface, they're in the entirety of the catacombs. And you're fighting these little things all the way through the game back to your ship instead of that quiet introspective bit after the Metroid Queen. It's a lot of the atmosphere is lost, and I can appreciate what they were doing with the melee counter, but I feel like they leaned too hard into it.
Yeah, if they're going to do that, and I've said this before, I really feel like if they want to make a Metroid game, a 2D Metroid game, or a 2.5D, that was kind of crazy like that, they would almost be better off ripping Samus from Smash Bros. And just making an entire 2.5D Metroid like that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they'd lean more into the gunplay by having different beams and all your different crazy and make the gun more effective versus Smash Bros. Is just a charge beam and a regular blip blap with a couple missiles.
Right.
but having an entire move set that you could get into if they wanted to make something like that crazy, that's how they would need to do it. Because the whole little melee finishers and stuff like that, I want to say started in Other M.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's what they were. They were just finisher moves that were just kind of like fancy. Like, oh, I'll come across a boss, I'm going to go blap, blap, blap in the face.
Yeah, and honestly, I would have rather had a dodge button than the melee counter.
Yeah, dodge roll. That would be a huge improvement for the Metroid game as a whole, is dodge rolling. Yeah. Like, and they could do that in a regular 2D. You're just like, oh yeah, you have an aerial dodge and a ground dodge, and they could really mix that up into just puzzles and whatnot too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, so, I mean, another Metroidvania title that wholly embraces dodge rolling is Guacamelee. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't played Guacamelee, it's insanely good. Both of them are insanely good. They're funny as hell. It's just fan service and pop culture reference all the way through, but they're super, super capable Metroidvania titles on top of that, with almost Smash Bros. Combat.
Yeah, and Dead Cells is another one that's Metroidvania-esque that does, like, the dodge is integral.
It's absolutely it's brilliant, because also the most important thing Dead Cells does is that it allows you to cancel anything you're doing into a dodge roll, and it's immediate. Yes. And from a game design perspective, that is, I mean, they call Dead Cells the Dark Souls of Metroidvania, and I'm pretty sure that's a fairly accurate description, but the fact that you can be mid-swing and you can just cancel to a roll brings a lot of strategy. It allows them to ramp the difficulty of the game up, because now you have an escape button. Yeah. That you're never punished for using, really.
Yeah, so I think Metroid could benefit from that, and I wish that they had done that instead of the counter in Samus Returns.
Yeah.
But, I mean, all three of these are well worth checking out. Metroid Absolutely. 2 is on the 3DS eShop, but not the Wii U eShop. Even though all the rest of 2D Metroid is on the Wii U eShop, Metroid 2 is only on the 3DS eShop. Samus Returns is obviously on the 3DS. AM2R is, PC, Windows, Linux, and it says Android. I'm not sure if I'd want to play this on a phone, though.
Yeah, not unless you were hooking up a computer, or hooking up a controller.
Yeah.
I originally tried to play it with a keyboard, and don't do that.
Don't do that.
It is not designed to. It is horrible playing it with a keyboard. Just plug in a controller.
The game starts with a screen that says a controller is recommended.
Yeah,
they weren't lying. They're not lying when they say that.
But yeah, if you're a fan of Metroid, I highly recommend checking out all three of these. They're all worth your time. Check these games out, y'all. They're fairly easy to get a hold of. I bought a physical copy of Metroid 2, and it didn't cost that much. It's just, real good games.
Real good games. No, definitely. All three of them.
And on 3DS, at least in the UK, it was like $3.99, I think. So it's really cheap on there.
Yeah, super, super cheap. I think that's about all we've got for these. I mean, like I said, multiple times, these games were big games. They were very good games, and for various reasons, they were important to the hobby and and their various franchises. Yeah, I mean there was a lot special about the Game Boy. It's good. I figured it was a very good one to talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I have a Game Boy proudly on display.
Yeah.
We did have an original growing up, which God knows where that is now. Wherever it is, it probably still works. But I've just got GBA SP now.
Yeah, I've got the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy Advance SP, although that mine doesn't work if it's not plugged in anymore. But it's the NES version, so I'm not getting rid of it.
That would probably be an easy fix.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My original Game Boy doesn't work anymore. My Game Boy Color still works just fine. But I mean, most Game Boy games nowadays I play on the Game Boy Player because I can put it on the TV.
If I'm playing from cartridge, I'll stick it on the Retron 5.
Yeah, there's that too. But yeah, I think that's about all we had to say. So we'll take a quick break and finish up.
Well, that's another episode in a bag on an iconic platform, iconic console, really a game changer, pun intended. And a super important page in just Nintendo's history as a whole, video game history and Nintendo history. It's a big deal. Literally bomb-proof. Literally bomb-proof. That's all I really have before we close up. We do have our contest winner for the Doom 64. I apologize if I butcher this first name, but the winner of Doom 64 for whatever platform you choose is Hakid Mohammed Zahani. I think that is how that first name is pronounced. We will be contacting you very swiftly and figuring out what platform you want that game on. Congratulations. And
congratulations, Doom 64 is a solid game.
Yeah, it's
fantastic game. Honestly, it's one of my favorite Dooms now. I love it. But with that being said, I think all that's left to be said is thanks for tuning in, thanks for supporting us, and goodbye.
Goodbye. Hello, boys. You'll never guess who I just trapped inside of this cursed Game Boy that I bought from a shifty stranger in an alleyway.
Sorry.
I did not expect that line to go over that well.